Welcome to the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast presented by Boss Girl Creative. This is episode number 488. Today, I'm talking about a hard topic. What happens to your digital footprint if something were to happen to you? Now let's dive in. Hey, I'm Taylor Bradford, host of the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast presented by Boss Girl Creative. I help small business owners turn their purpose into a paycheck, and it starts with visibility. In the online world, visibility equates to sales. So if you're dreaming of being the next $1 million entrepreneur, you've come to the right place because weekly I share visibility tips, brand advice, and business resources. So grab a notebook, your favorite pen, and a beverage, and let's do the work. Hello, welcome to episode number 488. I'm your host, Taylor Bradford. Thank you so much for being here. Today is going to be a hard topic, and I kind of want to give some backstory as to why we're having this conversation. But before we get there, I do want to say a quick reminder. I have two things that you can purchase that will help continue supporting Boss Girl Creative if you haven't already purchased them. Number one is my book, Pillars and Purpose, How to Build a Business That Works for You. It's workbook style, and you can grab it over on Amazon. Go to bossgirlcreative.com/pillars book. It will take you right there. You can get a Kindle version or you can get a print version. And then also I have a 90-day undated planner that focuses on your task and to-do list, but also gratitudes and daily affirmations. If you want to track the moon cycle, you can do that as well. Go to bossgirlcreative.com/BGC planner, and it will take you straight to Amazon for you to grab a copy of that. Okay, so let's find out what's been going on in the land of social media. Social media headline number one, Meta expands its AI chatbot availability. Meta AI is coming to a search bar near you. Social media headline number two, U.S. states launch legal action against TikTok over teen harm. Another legal challenge for the app. Social media headline number three, Meta tests improved Instagram to Threads cross-posting. The move would help to streamline post sharing between the apps. Social media headline number four, X removes ad revenue share from creator payments program. X is switching to a more self-sustaining model for creator payouts. And finally, this one made me giggle. LinkedIn adds another puzzle game. Another game on LinkedIn. So there's that. That's that headline. And that wraps up this week's social media headlines. Okay, so let's dive into the meat and potatoes of this week. The topic being what happens to your digital footprint if something were to happen to you. And the reason we're having this conversation is because recently, I joined a mastermind. And you guys have heard me say, if you've been a listener for some time, you've heard me say that I don't believe in masterminds that charge you $1 bajillion. I don't. I do believe in masterminds where it makes sense for the host of the mastermind to receive some kind of compensation for their time in leading the mastermind. Like, I do believe that there should be some payment exchange. First of all, it puts your skin in the game that you will show up, or you might show up more if you give financially to be a part of something, but also their time is worth something. I just don't think that 6 figures makes sense. I don't even think 5 figures makes sense. So I'm in a mastermind. It did not cost either one of those things. And there are 9 of us total, and it's already been amazing. And it's giving me some, my wheels are turning as to how can I do this for Boss Girl Creative, because I do think that there's power in having this kind of a setup for humans to come together in a short window. So it's 5 weeks long. It's not 6 weeks. It's not 8 weeks. It's not 12 weeks. I feel like most people can give 5 weeks of their time. And we had our first kickoff call on Sunday, and it was really good. But we started talking about legacy and legacy as it pertains to a podcaster's voice. And the reason the host was talking about legacy is she is working on something for her day job. So she works for a particular audio hosting platform, and they produce a podcast as well. So she's been doing research for an upcoming episode, and she was researching somebody very specific, and this somebody very specific had previously given 2 interviews via podcasts. However, these shows are no longer. The shows are no longer produced for whatever reason, whether it's the host put the podcast to bed or something happened to the podcaster. I don't know in either one of those scenarios which one it is. That part doesn't matter. The part that matters is this person gave an interview to 2 different people, and you now can no longer access the audio. And that is huge from a legacy standpoint, from a reporter, news reporter standpoint, from a researcher or historian standpoint. Because the fact of the matter is, podcasting is only about 20 years old. And the audio platforms where you can host your audio do not give you an option to go into legacy mode if you choose to either put your show to bed or if something were to happen to you. And I say that because my show, this is episode 488. If something were to happen to me, as long as my credit card was still going for my payment, or my bank account was still open for my payment, I don't remember how I pay for my audio hosting, but as long as they're open, my audio is available. But the moment that my bank account or my credit card is turned off, shut down, expired, then my audio disappears forever. And you talk about a punch to the gut, because 488 episodes is I'm in my 10th season of podcasting. I have recorded an episode every single week since episode number 1. I've never missed a week. I've never repurposed a show. I might have talked about a topic in the past and re-brought that topic back to life because it was something that I either observed, watched, learned, experienced personally, and it was relevant again to have a conversation about. But I've never gone to episode 222 and decided that needed to be episode 488. And there's a lot of work that goes into podcasting. Podcasting is not an easy medium to decide to step into. It is rewarding in the sense of the connections that you can make and the conversations that you have, which, by the way, is why I encourage you to right now hit that pause button and come over and say hello to me on Instagram at Boss Girl Creative. I would love to chat with you and get to know you. Quick shout out to some conversations I've had recently in my DMs. First of all, Ella and her daughter, Willow. They are brand new listeners to the show. Welcome to Boss Girl Creative. So excited to have you as listeners, and just super pumped that Willow's interested in entrepreneurship, specifically fashion. And thank you guys so much for listening. So I would love to hear from you. Hit that pause button, come over, say hello in Instagram at Boss Girl Creative. So back to podcasting, it's not an easy medium to step into. There's a lot of work involved. And to know that it could possibly all go away is kind of sad and kind of heartbreaking. But then I started thinking about all the other ways that we promote ourselves or create content and promote and publish content on the interwebs. And all of that mostly is paid. We have to pay for our hosting. We have to pay for our domain name. And when we stop doing those things, what happens? It all goes away. And I would hate for that to happen to a lot of us who have been creating content, publishing content for quite some time. So what do you need to do in order to keep your voice alive? And I say this because also from a historian standpoint, my time as a petroleum landman, I would my whole job was to find people in time to track their mineral ownership. And we have in the United States, we have a method to do that as it relates to property records. So every courthouse has deed records that go back to the beginning of that particular county's inception. And as property changes hands, a deed record is filed. There's all kinds of other records that get filed. But that is one way that we as a country track records of property ownership. But the World Wide Web has not been around for that long. And I can remember when I first started my very first blog in 2008, I was using Google and their Blogger platform. And the Blogger platform was a free platform, and you had there was no payment. So everything that you wrote went out for free. Now, the trade-off for having a free platform is they actually controlled the content that you wrote and had some ownership in it, which is why most of us in about 2011 created our own websites. We got our own domain names instead of using a Blogspot domain. And then we all bought hosting services so that we could maintain the ownership of that. But all of that is driven by a monthly fee most of the time. And so what happens if something were to happen to you? Have you put in writing how to handle your digital footprint? How do you handle your blog? How do you handle your website? How do you handle your podcast audio? Now, the one caveat to this entire conversation is YouTube. And I'm so thankful. One of the girls in this mastermind is and has worked at both Meta and Google, and she had some really great insight into YouTube. So Big Brother, Google, they are separate entities now. And so YouTube has literally their own search engine and their own behind the scenes algorithms and coding and all of that. They had to be separate because of, probably FCC stuff. But in the scheme of things, YouTube is its own thing. And I bring up YouTube just in the sense of they don't take content down. Once it's in their platform, as long as it does not go against their community guidelines, it will live there rent-free for eternity. And my brother passed away in 2011. I can still go find my brother's content, his YouTube channel on YouTube, and hear his voice from the content he published on YouTube prior to his passing in 2011. And that's wild to me to be able to go find his content still available to listen to on YouTube. And YouTube doesn't have in their primary future, their future endeavors, they don't have a mechanism to change that. They don't want to change that. They want to be this massive search engine giant. I don't know the actual proper terms, but they want that content to live on forever, and they're doing everything to handle that content. It's the only platform for sure that where content can be produced and published into that is a medium that will live on. Every other medium has the potential to go away once you stop paying. And I'm pretty sure there are lawyers that, as far as estate planning is concerned, that could handle this. You would just have to make sure you put that in writing for how to handle your digital footprint, your passwords, your payments, how is it getting paid, and making sure that you provide for that in the future if that is something that matters to you. Now, you could come out of your audio host and host your own RSS feed and put that within your website instead of having an audio host fee. However, you would have to have a very robust server to handle audio, just in general, to handle audio And again, there's a fee for that. So while you can have like the ownership of everything sitting in one location, there's still going to be fees involved, especially your domain names. Like you can't just own a domain name outright. You have a yearly renewal fee. Like we are renting so much space on the internet. It's so crazy. Like none of us actually have ownership of like how we last for eternity. So that is what we're talking about this week. What happens if something happens to you? Your digital footprint, what happens to it? I want you to start thinking about that, especially if you're here to leave a legacy for yourself and for your family members to, see your hard work and to hear your voice or to watch your videos. I want you to think about that. It's something that people don't talk about, and to hear my host of my mastermind literally say, this one person had 2 interviews. That's the only interviews they gave, and now you can't get to them. Now, there is a big project going on behind the scenes. I believe it's something called like the Internet Archives or something like that. And there are a couple of schools that are handling that. And they are working to do a lot of preservation because they do see this topic as something very important that students are studying. However, this platform was hacked this past weekend, and that's concerning because they are trying to archive the internet and they got hacked. So that's even not foolproof. So your only foolproof method is to put something in writing, to give somebody instructions to handle your digital footprint if something were to happen to you. And we are not promised tomorrow. Like my assistant came in yesterday, we had our Monday meeting. I really wish she would have led with what she said, but we got through our Monday meeting and then she's like, hey, my aunt's in a coma. She doesn't have any brain activity. It happened this past weekend. And I'm like, we're not promised tomorrow. Like it's heartbreaking to hear young people talk about, their relatives, somebody that's super important to her is now possibly not going to be living. And so we're not promised tomorrow. So I want you to think about this very hard conversation. How do you want to handle your legacy as it relates to your digital footprint? Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope it gave you some food for thought as to how you want to handle your digital footprint, your legacy online. And let's have a conversation about it in my DMs. Pop over to Instagram at Boss Girl Creative. Until next time, I hope you have a great rest of your week. Hey, real quick before I go, I wanted to pop back in and say again, thank you so much for listening to this latest episode of the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast. I would so love a favor from you right now. Would you please share this episode with a friend or share it to your social media and tag me at Boss Girl Creative? Oh my gosh, that would mean so much to me if you did that right now. Okay, I'll see you next week with a brand new episode.